Hi, I am Rosa Buca, and I am recording my testimony. I was born in Hollywood, California in 1973. I went to private school, Page Elementary School, which had some pretty wealthy people there and some Hollywood celebrities' children there. But I was not really the poor kid, but I would say the middle class kid. And I always felt a little bit different and less than in that environment. My parents were not religious at all. I would say my dad was, maybe if you pressed him, he would say he was a Buddhist. He read a lot of Buddhist literature, but I don't remember going to temple or anything like that as a kid with him. And my mom's spirituality was like the Force, like Star Wars type of spirituality. So, and about fifth grade, my parents got divorced and I switched schools. So I went to public school at that point and I got a pony. So I got to go horseback riding every day after school. And that was really where I started to develop a connection with God, was through nature. Things continued to spiral downward in my family. Both my parents had a drinking problem, and eventually my house got foreclosed and my pony taken away, and I ended up moving in with my dad when I was 15. I barely graduated high school. I had some pretty severe depression by that point, and I just remember feeling kind of like a walking zombie a lot of the time. Anyway, I graduated high school at California High School in 1991, and I was working as a waitress at a little restaurant down there called Coco's Restaurant. So not too long after that, I decided that I was going to move as far away from Los Angeles as I could get. I hated the noise, the traffic, the too many people. So I went to Northern California based on a picture that I had seen from my boyfriend in high school. Showed me a picture of Humboldt County, and I was hooked because I was from the desert, and this was a picture of a blackberry bush growing out of a Model T Ford. It was all over the inside of the vehicle, growing out of where the engine block was, and I just never seen anything like that. I thought, that's incredible, I gotta go. So I enrolled at College of the Redwoods, and at 19 I packed up my little yellow Chevy Citation and drug a loser boyfriend with me up there and started college. No idea what I wanted to do, so I just kind of took everything, and eventually broke up with that boyfriend. He was a jerk, not very nice to me, and ended up getting my car impounded, and that's when I figured out I could get out of that relationship. So looking back, I realized like I was kind of a dangerous character, and I didn't have great tools for sensing good people versus bad. And so I just kind of bopped along through life, very codependent, highly codependent, and drinking probably more than was normal, I would say. And then just being really promiscuous too. Like relationships would last maybe 3 months, and then I'd find somebody new and move on. So eventually I moved back from Humboldt County to Los Angeles. I was working for State Farm Insurance and living in Santa Monica, California. And I really liked that. That was an enjoyable job. I was going to junior college down there, still just trying to figure out what is it that I'm going to do with my life. I had no idea. And after some time of being in Santa Monica, I ended up with what I now know is a narcissistic boss. He came into the situation and I just freaked out and overreacted. I was at that point smoking a lot of pot. And anyway, so this new boss that I got was horrible and abusive and just condescending and rude, and so I quit. I quit that job and ended up moving up to Sebastopol with my aunt, and she was with a covert narcissist at that point. But I was kind of, I think, spiraling out of control. I was so lost. I had no idea what to do with my life. Anyway, so I kind of bounced around like that for quite some time, and eventually ended up going into the mental institution. I was diagnosed as bipolar. Now that I look back, I probably was smoking too much weed. Maybe I had some laced weed. But also, too, I think I was pretty emotionally unstable because I just didn't have very good tools on how to be responsible and even-tempered. I just didn't have a clue. I didn't have good models for that, except my dad was a very solid person, but he wasn't really in the picture as much as I would like at that time. So anyway, so I kind of started to lose my marbles a little bit. Ended up in the mental institution, was given Depakote, Zyprexa, Risperdal. Those are the ones that I can remember, and I think Ativan. And I was told that I was bipolar and I was going to need to take these medicines for the rest of my life. But I just didn't believe it. I couldn't accept that. I couldn't believe that. And besides, the medicine didn't really work. I was still crazy. I was still talking to trees and crows. There's a funny story about that. But anyway, I could not pull it together. And I was freaking out everybody. I could see it in their face that I was scaring people. So I was just sure that I wasn't going to need to take these medications forever, that there was another solution. I just wasn't sure what it would be. And then I found a really good therapist named Dr. Arla Wallace. I will always be grateful for her. And I stopped taking all of those medications. And I think I stopped smoking weed too. But just because I couldn't get it, not because I had any epiphany about that being connected in some way to my emotional issues. Anyway, so I worked with her for about a year. I got it together. I ended up going back to Northern California to Humboldt State University, and I eventually graduated with a degree in speech communication in 2001. Still had nothing to do with the Lord. I always thought Christians were crazy, weird people. That was kind of my dad's perception of them. And the few that I had known throughout my life kind of didn't do much to change my opinion of Christians. I had a Catholic priest that I somehow got to know, and he was trying to convert me by mailing me Bible scriptures, which meant nothing to me. And then he tried to kiss me, which I thought he was breaking his moral code. So I just really lost respect for him and continued along my way of kind of New Age, I would say, with a little bit of Buddhism, practicing meditation, and then just embracing a lot of New Age philosophy, like The Secret and the Law of Attraction, those kinds of things. Reading New Age books like The Celestine Prophecy, anything by Eckhart Tolle, watching Oprah Winfrey. Those were, so I would say, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. So that was my foundation. So after I graduated in 2001, I decided that I wanted to be a life coach. So I moved down to San Diego and got a job working for Tony Robbins companies. And I was just a receptionist at the time, but I thought that I would, advance up the ranks over time. But eventually I got pretty disappointed in my perception of Tony Robbins' character at that time. That was in 2001. He was going through a divorce, and I felt that he lied. I was pretty certain that he was cheating on his wife with Sage. And anyway, so I lost a lot of respect for him, and I never did apply for the coaching position. I ended up moving back to Northern California and working for the university in the receiving room. So I did that for some time, and then that assignment ended, and I did some accounts payable work for Humboldt State University. And then I ended up working for KXGO selling radio advertising, and that's where my salvation story comes in. I ended up walking into a pastor's office at Arcata First Baptist Church, and I tried to sell him advertising. Didn't work. He sold me Jesus. We ended up in a conversation about God, and the next time that I came in there, I had a list of 13 questions. And they're all the typical questions, right? If God exists, why is the world so mean? Why do children get harmed? why do people act the way that they do? Why does God allow all of this horrible stuff? Wars, famines, that kind of thing. And he very patiently explained to me all of the answers to those questions. And then he asked me if I wanted to accept Jesus as my Savior. And for some reason, the file folder with the other Christians didn't come up in my mind. I just thought, okay, yeah, why not? And so that is in 2003 when I decided to be part of God's sheep, part of his tribe, I would say. But I still don't think that I understood at that time how much I was going to need to change my life. So in 2003, I got baptized. I was still going to Arcata First Baptist Church. And I don't know if I had demons in me before that. I would reckon I did. But through the process of reading scripture and going to church, I started to become more out there again, started to have manic episodes again. And I was still meditating, and I'm pretty sure that I contracted a demon through the process of a specific meditation that I did where I sat down, and I just remember coming out of the meditation and cracking my neck and like looking all around and just feeling like something was assessing the situation. It was really weird. Anyway, as a result of that demon being in my spirit, probably in addition to other demons, definitely something from the occult, and much later I figured out there was like a spirit of Buddhism that was in me. Anyway, I ended up thinking that I was madly in love with the pastor's son, and I tried to stop his wedding. Super embarrassing. Yeah, that was really embarrassing and humiliating, and I really thought that it was the Lord telling me to do that. I was reading all these scriptures about go in and take the land. And anyway, so I think that really hurt my ability to trust hearing from the Lord. I ended up going to Humboldt healing rooms and getting a lot of that stuff prayed out of me, but I think there was something there still hiding in the background that just really affected my perception, and it affected my choices. Now, I didn't go back on medication or back into the mental institution after that manic episode. I apologized, and I think that was pretty much the last time I had anything like that happen, just by sheer willpower, I would say. So I started reading scriptures, and I started doing the parts that I could understand in terms of feeding the hungry, being kind, gentle, allowing evil to just kind of pass over you without engaging it. I'm putting it in my own terms, but that's the way that I would read the scripture, is I would interpret it into my own language, and then I would follow it in that way. So continuing along as a Baptist, I ended up ending the relationship that I was in. I was in a lesbian relationship, although I wouldn't say that I ever was a lesbian. It just sort of happened. And it's interesting because I always felt kind of creepy about it. It just never sat with me. That relationship didn't last very long. Anyway, so I ended that, and then I did my best to try to get in alignment with what God wanted for my life. And eventually I decided that I was trying to practice as a life coach on my own for some time and have a job to pay the bills. But eventually I decided that I wanted to do massage therapy. And everything that I did, it was God's will. And moved in 2012 from Northern California to a little town in Mississippi called Lucedale, Mississippi. So I began attending the Methodist church here in Lucedale when I first got here, and I just felt like I wanted more drive and more warmth, more passion, and so I ended up going to the Baptist church, not really clicking there, and then I ended up finding a Hebrew Roots community, which is called the River of Life Tabernacle here, and I started attending that church, which is a Saturday worshiping Torah observant church. Anyway, I eventually I was in massage school. I was attending that church. I was still not obedient to the Father. I was still being promiscuous, still going to bars, drinking. I had boyfriends. I wouldn't change my boyfriends all the time. And for some reason, I never really saw the conflict there. I don't understand if I had scales over my eyes or if there was some kind of a spiritual oppression going on with me or what, but I didn't have any problem accepting that Saturday was the Sabbath. That made sense to me. I didn't have any problem accepting that there were still dietary laws in effect. No problem with that. I don't understand why. Later on, I found out I have some Seventh-day Adventist ancestry in my bloodline, and so maybe that had something to do with it. I'm not sure. And then I met my ex-husband, the Gator. I don't even want to say his name. Anyway, that turned out to be the most difficult challenge of my life, was getting ensnared by this person who later told me that he had borderline personality disorder, which is a form of narcissism, which is, in my perception, I think narcissists are demonically engaged, controlled people. And so I ended up getting ensnared by this person. I really felt so much manipulation and guilt tripping throughout the whole relationship. I just didn't know how to break free from that. It never felt good. But anyway, so I met him then in 2013, graduated massage school in 2014, got my license, and we together moved to Vicksburg. I always noticed that there was something off about him. He had a tremendous amount of anxiety, but I thought, well, he's just anxious. I never really understood that he was full of demons. Throughout my own experiences, I never really was able to discern very well between people who had demons in their spirit or myself having something in me. Although I read the scriptures, and a lot of what Jesus did was casting out demons, I understood that there was that element. I just hadn't activated that part of my perception yet. So over this walk from 2003 until 2014, I had been shedding little pieces of the old me. But I wouldn't say that I ever really surrendered completely to Yeshua and let him transform me. I was always such a control freak. I always wanted to keep my own life under my own control. So I understand now that the reason that I attracted to this person and didn't run for my life right in the beginning is because I had a lot of things that I needed to work through. So anyway, that turned out to be a highly emotionally, physically, financially abusive relationship in just about every sense of the word. And I cannot believe that I would allow myself to be ensnared like that. But I was a weak Christian. I was not reading my scriptures like I should have. I was not learning, growing. I just had this attitude of, I'm saved, and once saved, always saved, and I'm going to heaven, and that was enough, I suppose. So throughout the course of that relationship, I just felt like I allowed him to take more and more and more of my territory, to the point where I was locked inside of an apartment and handed over my keys and my phone, let this person just completely destroy me in every sense of the word. Didn't allow me to go to church anymore. Didn't allow me to have friends. I basically was worshiping this person and begging him to be kind, which never worked. Anyway, I ended up feeling so trapped and lost and beyond depressed. I thought I had experienced depression. There was nothing like this kind of depression. It was demonic. And I started to hear voices that told me I should kill myself. And the perversion within that relationship just got worse and worse and worse and more dark. And I was tortured. And especially in sexually perverted, dark ways. And I just felt like there was no way I could escape because I would run away, and then he'd hunt me down and find me and take me back. And anyway, he left to go get drugs, and I decided I was going to end it then, so I crawled into the bathroom and I slit my wrists and tried to get myself to bleed out, but I couldn't get a good enough flow of blood. And at that point, I had the Bible. I couldn't even read. I was so anxious, but I would sleep with the Bible under my head, and I was just praying to Jesus, please just take me out of this. I just want to die. I just want to be with you, God. And so as I was cutting my arm, I cut a cross into it and said, I just want to be with you. And realized that I was never going to get enough blood flowing to actually end it. So I crawled up the fire escape of the apartment building where we lived. It was 13 floors, but you could only get to the 12th floor through the elevator. You had to crawl out through the fire escape in order to get on the roof and then, jump off. That was the plan anyway. So as I'm standing there and I'm thinking about what's going on, I'm kind of looking over the ledge. I feel this gentle breeze, Hollywood would have turned it into like a big powerful burst, and I would have been blown back, and of course it would have been way more dramatic, but it was soft and gentle, almost imperceptible. And I knew I was in the presence of an angel. I was so polluted at that point that I couldn't see it, but I knew that I was in the presence of an angel, and had a very brief conversation with it. I said, I can't stand this anymore. I just need it to end. And the angel said, you don't want to do that. And he showed me a picture of what my body would look like if I threw myself off. And he showed me what that would do to my dad. He'd have to identify the body. And he said, you would be bound here with all these other demons. It was the Vicksburg Hotel is where I lived, on Clay Street in Vicksburg, and it's a very haunted building. He said, you would be bound here with all these other demons for eternity. You would not get to go be with the Father. So I questioned him about that, and he says, just the way it works. If you take your own life, you forever separate yourself from the Father. So I thought about that, and I thought, well, it's not really going to serve the purpose I want. It's not really going to end my suffering, is it? And then the angel also told me, you'll never hug your mother again, and you'll never learn NLP and be a life coach, which at that point was still my big dream. So I said, oh, okay. And I crawled back down the fire escape and went back to the apartment and planned my escape from the gator and eventually got out. It took some time. I went back a couple of times, but eventually I escaped out in the middle of nowhere in Roxy, Mississippi, and the Lord completely rescued me. I was out on the highway hitchhiking because I had escaped when, again, my ex-husband went to go get more drugs. And it was about to get dark. I wish I could remember the number of the highway there in Roxy, Mississippi, but we're talking nowhere. And as it came dark, I started to freak out. What am I going to do? Oh my God. Probably wild animals were in the forest. It was likely that something was going to get me, And a highway patrol officer pulls over and he says, ma'am, you're not allowed to hitchhike. Don't you know how dangerous it is? And I guess I must have looked just completely broken. So he took me back to the highway patrol station and let me call my mom, who was here in Lucedale, about 3 hours away from Roxy. Let me spend the night in the station, and she came and she got me the next day, and that's how I got out. So I'm so grateful to the Lord for walking me out of that situation that I walked myself into. And I've had no contact with that gator since 10, 28, 15. and I would say breaking my addiction to him was the hardest part. I just kept wanting to talk to him, contact him, tell him what I thought, tell him what a piece of dirt he was, then other times, I'm sorry and I forgive you and I made mistakes too. Anyway, just insanity, I would say. So fortunately, I, through the power of the Lord, was able to just close that off completely. I ended up practicing massage therapy, going back to California for a brief period of time, but then coming back here. And then I ended up changing churches. I started going to Second Chance Ministries. I don't know, there wasn't anything wrong with the church that I was going to. I just felt like something was missing. There was just a power that I wasn't experiencing. And so anyway, so now I've been going to Second Chance Ministries for about a year now, I would say. And I feel really good about that connection. Not that long ago, it was about 2 or 3 months ago, I was feeling like massage therapy really wasn't my purpose, that I had somehow gotten it wrong. I was feeling doors close. And so I went to church for the special prayer service to find out if something was going on with me. And I received prayer, and there was still a spirit, a devil, still way back up in my guts, and it was called Spirit of Buddhism. I didn't know that it was there and that it was impacting my life, and it was probably skewing my perception. And I received prophecy that I was a teacher, which didn't shock me at all. I'm very connected to learning and helping people learn, and that's why I wanted to be a life coach, because I really want to help people. But what I said was teacher of small children, which that was so strange. Anyway, that was about 3 months ago, and ever since then I've been trying to figure out how it is that I can put that into my life. And then not too long after that, as I was trying to figure it out, and I was halfway through a business degree in a master's in business degree online, and I was thinking, well, gosh, I guess I gotta see how this fits into the whole thing. So fortunately, it won't be too difficult for me to just change my major, and once I get 6 units in a master's in teaching, I can begin teaching in the schools, which as I started to think about it, I thought, yeah, it makes sense that the Lord would use me that way. And then the church called me and asked, did I want to work in the nursery, and told me that they would pay me to do that. So that's what I've been doing. That started this past week. Anyway, I just want to be more useful to God. I want to be more clear in my perception. I want to be able to know that I know that I know that I'm hearing His voice, and I don't want any more entities in me. So that's it. That's my story. My name is Rosa Butka, and I'm glad you took the time to listen to me. Thank you.